All right, let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into Progressive Insurance. We've got a whole stack of their annual reports from like 2009 to 2023, and then we're going to try to figure out what is it about Progressive that makes them so successful? How have they managed to keep such a low combined ratio, compared to everyone else?
Yeah, their combined ratio is remarkably consistent, isn't it? And
Mm,
for listeners who might be new to this whole insurance world, the combined ratio basically tells you how profitable an insurance company is. So the lower that ratio is, the more money they're keeping from those premiums after they pay out all those claims and cover their expenses, of course.
right, right. So, okay, let's go back in time a bit to like 2009. Progressive rolls out these concierge service centers for claims, and their whole thing was like, it's cars, not cash. So instead of just cutting you a check when you filed a claim, they were all about actually getting your car repaired.
Yeah, and that's a pretty savvy move from a financial standpoint. By taking charge of the repair process, they could probably negotiate better rates with those repair shops, right? And they could make sure the repairs were done well, which ultimately means lower payouts for them. It's a good example of how putting the customer first can actually benefit the company too.
Makes sense, makes sense. And then a few years later, like in 2015, they come out with this whole Sprinkles Are for Winners campaign. I mean, it was catchy and all, but what's interesting is how they linked it to their financial performance. They were basically bragging about their low combined ratio.
Yeah, that Sprinkles campaign was really clever. They took this wonky financial thing, combined ratio, and made it something that people could actually relate to, even find funny. It was a way to show everyone that, hey, we're doing well, we're responsible with our money.
Totally. Okay, so let's talk about data because Progressive was way ahead of the curve on this. They were early adopters of these usage-based insurance programs like MyRate that came out in 2009, and then Snapshot too, which I remember when that first came out, it seemed kind of radical.
Oh, yeah, they were definitely pioneers in that space. These programs use telematics, which basically means they're collecting all this data from your car, how fast you drive, how hard you brake, what time of day you're on the road, all that stuff.
So they're gathering all this info about how you actually drive, but how does that help them keep their combined ratio so low?
Well, with all that data, they can get a much more accurate picture of individual risk. It's more precise than just looking at your age or your driving history. They can actually identify the safe drivers and reward them with lower premiums.
And I read that by 2017, they had collected something like 22 billion miles of driving data.
Wow. That's a massive amount of data, and it gives them a huge advantage. They can use it to really fine tune their pricing, target the best customers, the ones who are less likely to make claims. And of course, that all feeds back into keeping that combined ratio nice and low.
So it's not just about collecting data, it's about using it strategically.
Exactly. They're using it to manage risk in a really smart way.
All right, so we've talked about their combined ratio, their use of data, but they've also got some really innovative products and services, like that Name Your Price tool, where you can basically customize your coverage and how much you pay.
Yeah, that's a great example of how they're putting the customer in control. And it fits in perfectly with their destination era strategy,
Yeah.
which is all about being more than just an auto insurer. They want to be the place you go for all your insurance needs, home, renters, everything.
So they're trying to create this ecosystem where you get everything from them. It makes it harder for people to switch to a different company.
Exactly. They're building loyalty, creating this sticky relationship with their customers.
So it's not just selling policies, it's about building something more lasting.
Yeah, it's about creating an experience that's convenient, personalized, and valuable for the customer in the long run.
So they've got a lot going for them. But what about the future, right? The insurance world is changing fast with things like the sharing economy, autonomous vehicles. How is Progressive preparing for all this potential disruption?
Well, that's a great question, and that's exactly what we're going to dig into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll look at the challenges and opportunities on the horizon for Progressive and how they're using their data and their innovative culture to navigate this uncharted territory.
Stay tuned. Okay, so we're back, and we're still deep in the world of Progressive insurance. Before the break, we were talking about their destination era, this idea of becoming like a one-stop shop for all your insurance needs. So has that actually been working for them?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at their financials, it's been a major growth driver. By expanding beyond just auto insurance, right? Offering things like homeowners, renters, even pet insurance, they've created all these new revenue streams.
Right, so they're not putting all their eggs in one basket anymore. But how does this tie back into their whole data thing, their data-driven approach?
Well, think about it. The more different types of insurance someone has with Progressive, the more data they're giving them. They get this much more complete picture of their customers, their needs, how risky they are.
So it's like they're building this 360-degree view of each customer, and then they can use that to tailor their products and services to each individual.
Exactly. And it helps them refine their risk models, make better decisions about pricing, which of course leads to a healthier bottom line.
Yeah, it all comes back to profitability in the end. It's amazing how all these pieces connect together. They're using data not just to assess risk, but to drive growth and improve the whole customer experience.
It's a pretty powerful combination. And remember those usage-based programs we talked about, MyRate and Snapshot? They're constantly tweaking those, finding new ways to use that telematics data.
So it's not a one and done thing. They're constantly innovating.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the programs themselves, it's about their whole digital approach. Like their mobile app, for example, it's become this central hub for
Oh,
customers.
yeah. I use the app all the time. It's super convenient for managing my policy, paying bills.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? Make it easy for the customer,
Yeah.
but at the same time, they're collecting all this data on how people use the app, what they like, even their driving
So they're
habits.
making things better for the customer, and they're getting valuable data in return.
It's a win-win. But, we've got to talk about the future too. We've touched on this a bit already. The sharing economy, autonomous vehicles, those are some big potential disruptors to the whole insurance model.
Yeah, I mean, if fewer people own cars, that's going to hit their core auto insurance business hard. And what happens when cars are driving themselves? How do you even figure out risk then?
Those are the million-dollar questions, right? But the good thing is, Progressive is known for being adaptable. They're not afraid to change. They're already experimenting with insurance for rideshare drivers, and they're looking at ways to assess risk in a world of self-driving cars.
So they're not just sitting back and waiting to see what happens. They're trying to shape the future.
Exactly. And I think their willingness to embrace new technology, their whole culture of innovation, that's going to be key for them going forward.
Speaking of culture, one thing that stuck out to me from reading their reports is how much they emphasize empowering their employees, encouraging them to keep learning.
Yeah, that's a big part of their success. They've created this environment where people feel comfortable trying new things, taking risks, always striving to improve.
It's like they've built a learning machine, constantly adapting and evolving.
And that adaptability is going to be crucial in the years to come. The insurance industry is changing so fast, Progressive needs to stay ahead of the curve if they want to keep winning.
So they've got a lot going for them, but they can't get complacent. They got to keep pushing the limits, keep innovating.
Couldn't agree more. But I think they're up for the challenge. They've got a great track record, a strong financial base, and a culture that's all about embracing change.
Well, so far it sounds like Progressive is in a pretty good spot. But what about the risks, right? What could trip them up? What could slow them down? Let's dive into that in the final part of our deep dive. Okay, so we're back, and it's time to wrap up our Progressive deep dive. We've talked about all the good stuff, their history, how they use data, their plans for growth, but no company is perfect, right? There's always risks, always challenges. So what are some things that could derail Progressive? What could knock them off course?
Well, one of the big ones is just the sheer amount of competition out there. I mean, the insurance industry is attracting all these new players, especially tech companies with tons of money and a real drive to shake things up. They're bringing new technology, new ways of doing business. It's putting pressure on traditional insurers like Progressive to keep innovating.
Yeah, you're right. I've seen some articles about how companies like Google and Amazon are starting to sniff around the insurance world. That could be huge, couldn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's a potential game changer. Those companies have so much data, so much expertise in AI and machine learning that could give them a real advantage in things like risk assessment and pricing.
So progressives can't afford to stand still. They got to keep pushing the envelope.
Exactly. And that actually leads into another challenge, the speed of technological change. We've already talked about self-driving cars, but there's so much more on the horizon. Blockchain, the Internet of Things, even drones, all these things could disrupt the insurance industry in ways we can't even imagine yet.
It's mind-boggling, right?
Yeah.
So how does a company like Progressive, which is known for its more traditional strength,
Mhm.
like claims handling and customer service, how do they adapt to this crazy tech landscape?
It's a tough balancing act. They need to leverage what they're already good at, but also embrace the new stuff, find ways to make it all work together.
And that probably means taking risks, trying things that might not work out.
Absolutely. You can't be afraid to fail. You have to create a culture where people feel comfortable experimenting, pushing the boundaries.
So again, it comes back to that ability to adapt, that willingness to try new things.
Exactly. And another thing to keep in mind is the whole regulatory environment. The insurance industry is heavily regulated, so any new laws or changes to existing ones could really impact Progressive's business.
Yeah, they've got to stay on top of all that, be ready to adjust their strategies if they need to. It's probably a whole team's job, right? Just be keeping track of all the legal stuff.
Oh, yeah, it's a big deal. And it's not just about reacting to changes, they have to be proactive too. Working with regulators, trying to shape the laws in a way that makes sense for the industry and encourages innovation.
Right, so we've got competition, technology, regulation. That's a lot already. Anything else they need to worry about?
Well, one more thing, and it's kind of a broad one, but it's really important. Customer expectations are changing fast. People are used to the Amazon experience, right? They want everything to be smooth, personalized, instant.
The Amazon effect, yeah. It's like everyone expects the same level of service from every company they deal with, even their insurance company.
Exactly. So Progressive has to keep investing in their digital platforms, make sure the customer experience is top notch. They need to be where their customers are online, mobile, social media, everywhere.
So it's not easy, but it sounds like they have a lot of the pieces in place, right?
Mhm.
Strong brand, loyal customers, a data-driven culture, a history of innovation.
They do, but they can't rest on their laurels. They got to stay true to their values, embrace change, keep pushing the limits.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. We've learned so much about Progressive. What would you say are the key takeaways for our listeners, the things they should really remember?
I think the main takeaway is that Progressive success is proof that even in an old industry like insurance, data, technology, and putting the customer first, those things can be incredibly powerful.
And they've also shown us that if you want to stay on top, you got to keep learning, keep adapting.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a real pleasure exploring Progressive with you today.
Likewise. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. To all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in and keep diving deep.